Kory has a really good, I've seen him teach what he calls a fear setting exercise. Maybe he could kind of explain that really briefly, because I think it's a great tool for people to use when they feel stuck by fear and don't know how to move through it.
Yeah, certainly, Shari. So a fear setting exercise is a way of identifying what the fear is, and then identifying how to overcome that fear. So there's 4 steps to a fear setting exercise. Essentially, the first step is identifying what the fear is. Just saying it aloud, putting it on paper, getting it out of your thoughts, and documenting out that fear is basically saying, "I see you." You're recognizing that fear. And again, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes that fear has a deeper fear, and you might want to take a little time to redo the fear setting exercise multiple times to identify what that might be. But that first time, it might be, say, for example, it might be, I'm afraid of talking to somebody about the business publicly or something. And so then second step is you would then identify what's the worst case scenario of this fear. So if I let this fear happen and I went and talked to somebody about the business, what's the worst case scenario that could happen? Oftentimes, it's scarier in our head than we actually realize it is. And when you put it down on paper or you verbalize it, you realize it's not as scary as it was. It's something that you can say, oh, okay, so that's the worst case scenario. And then after that, then you say, okay, what is the solution? You got to put your problem solving hat on. And you say, what is the solution to this problem, to this worst case scenario? So, if the worst case scenario was, oh, that person might judge me for being in network marketing or something. Okay, well, what's the worst case scenario? That is, what's the problem solving to overcome that? Well, I can prepare myself to be able to handle that discussion or that topic. So I know that GoPro, for example, Eric Worre has a great training about how to handle those types of rebuttals, that if they were to bring up, oh, this is network marketing, how do you respond? What's the type of thing? So you become comfortable with that skill set. And then or you just get it to the point where they don't have any judgments on network marketing at all. And maybe that's the problem solving. And then the fourth step and the final is you identify what is the best case scenario. Basically meaning if I overcame this fear, what's the best case scenario that can happen out of this? And then you realize, oh my gosh, the best case scenario would be I bless someone else's life with financial peace, or I can reach a target goal, or I can find a new builder that wants to build a business with me, whatever that be, that best case scenario, then you realize, man, it is worth it to push through this fear because there's no other way I'm going to attain that unless I push past the fear. So just to recap that again, you have your first step is identifying the fear. The second is what's the worst case scenario and writing that out. And then the third step is what's the solution to the worst case scenario, followed by fourth step is what is the best case scenario by overcoming the fear.
I've done this exercise myself, and thank you, Kory, for bringing it here. And it works fantastically. I wish everyone in my team could do this kind of exercising. And I'm pretty sure that people who would like to progress in their business, they have to do it. I wanted to reflect a little bit also on your saying, Stephen, about responsibility and how we sabotaging ourselves with fear of failure until we take responsibility for our doings. And I can see it my downline as well. People literally stuck in someone stuck in their rank. I just don't want to go into details because they somewhere on the back they're fearing the responsibility for their team, and until they accept this, that this is time for leadership, guys. This is the like transition from you being a manager into leadership. Until they take this responsibility for themselves, this fear will be with them. So it's a huge, huge job to progress people in this direction. And I think this is a job of leader to show them the way, to be vulnerable, to accept, for example, my own mistakes on this way and tell them, look, there is a way, and there are some exercising of doing this, and shall we do this journey together?
Is it because people are not ready for leadership, or is it they fear leadership, or do they fear what is involved becoming a leader? Is there a combination of that? What is it? What is it that stops someone becoming a leader?
Well, I think it's different. All people are different. Someone will never become a leader, and this is their path and this is their journey. But what I'm trying to say that without taking on leadership, without taking on responsibility, I think their business might stop on the certain level. This is what I was trying to say.
I think another way, I mean, you could ask that same question by saying, you know, is someone going to become an entrepreneur and others not an entrepreneur? Or are some people going to be a millionaire and others not? I mean, everybody essentially chooses their own path. Now, of course, there is debate and discussion around, you know, certain barriers that maybe some groups of people might run into that make it a little harder than others. That's definitely, I mean, there's a few people that are born with a silver spoon, but I mean, other than that, everybody else has to work for it, right? They always have to overcome those fears to do it. And I think the key part here, though, is that it comes down to a choice of what path you want to go after. If you want to become a leader, you can become a leader. For some people, it becomes more natural and easy to do, and others, it's a little bit harder. And I think the part of that is that as you choose that you first make a priority. I want to be a leader. Then you invest into that. You invest into who you are. A lot of that investment is going to become overcoming fears. You know, you might have had a fear set at some point in your life. Going back to what Shari was talking about earlier about comparison, where you're now comparing yourself to other leaders, whether that's leaders in your own company or leaders outside. Maybe it's in church or in some kind of civic responsibility in government, you know, and then you look at them as a role model, but then you end up comparing yourself against them, saying, oh, I can never be a leader like them. And you're right. You will never be a leader like them because you are you. You are a leader like you. And you have to define what you are as a leader and what your leadership style looks like. You can borrow and learn from others, but you develop how you lead. And then a true leader means you have followers. If no one's following you, you're not leading. And so until you can identify how to follow you yourself and then how to lead, that's how you would then develop that leadership. And, you know, I think fear has a big part in that, right? Because you have to identify what types of fears you yourself have to overcome, because you can't lead others to overcome their fears until you've been able to learn to overcome your own.
I like that, Kory. I think, too, that sometimes we have a vision of how we think this should unfold, how I'm going to become a leader, and it's going to look like this step by step by step. And sometimes it gets really messy, and it doesn't look anything like we thought it would look like. And then the fear comes back in and says, okay, maybe I can't be a leader because this doesn't look like it's supposed to. One of my favorite quotes from Napoleon Hill is, most great people have attained their greatest success just one step beyond their greatest failure. And I like to share a story with my downline. My brother loves to solve Rubik's Cubes. He's really fast. He can do it, I think, in under a minute. But he explained to me one time that you get 3 sides of the Rubik's Cube completely solved. And then in order to solve the 4th side, you have to make a mess of the other three sides, and then it quickly comes together. And I think so often we get to the messy part and we allow the fear to tell us, we're just not cut out for this. We can't do this. And we stop just one step shy. The next step that we would take to move through that would bring us to that success that we've been wanting.
I have to say, I've been at days where you say to yourself, God, this is never going to work. This is never going to work. And then I say to myself, look, just do something. And I'll write another article. I will go through the whole process of writing this article, set up the scene and send it out. And once I've done that, okay, I've done it. And then I feel so much better because I feel, well, I have stepped that little step further forward and everything's okay again. And the universe is working its thing for me. And so I think it's a thing we all should have. And I'm sure even the top MLM gurus have a fear of failure at some time in their lives, because it's all kind of like, it doesn't matter how small you are in a business or how big, there's always that mindset which kind of ticks away at you.
A good point, Stephen. And it's that action. It's like, don't stay stuck in the fear, take action. I'm Canadian. We love hockey in Canada. Wayne Gretzky says, you will always miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So when you say, like you just did, Stephen, just take some action.
So a friend of mine, and he's been a friend of mine, he's been in MLM for years, and he's quite big in the business. And he done a video, and I stole his video, and I gave it to my downline. And he said, you cannot rely on the results. You can only rely on your actions. That's all you can do. The actions are the only thing that's important towards success, and failure is no action at all. And that's as simple. If you put it down to that simple process, it's the only way to look at it, I think.
Yeah.
If you do nothing, nothing will happen.
The only other comment or thought that comes to my mind is that fear is. You asked a question earlier. Is fear part of the process? And I would say yes. That fear is at some point in life we develop the fear to serve us, to save, to comfort, to provide safety for some type of reason. I mean, centuries, millennia ago, that fear might have saved our ancestors when it related to something might eat me, and so that they developed a fear enough that allowed them to be able to survive. In my days of maybe middle school or high school, I might have developed a fear of something that then served me. It protected me from, it might be embarrassment. It might be from gaining or losing a friend, or that fear might have been around grades, and that fear of failure came about because I didn't want to graduate, with a low GPA or something, right? So there might have developed something in my childhood. It might have been something even at post-marriage. It might have been something when my kids were born. I'd had this fear of something. And the whole point is, at some point that served you, but you have to ask yourself, does it serve you anymore? Does it provide that same value, or is it time to let it go? And when you're ready to let go of that fear so you can raise your own standard, you can up-level yourself to that next level of life, then that's when you can be able to push through that fear. You identify it, you push past it, and you no longer are held back by that. And now you're able to live a higher standard of life. But guess what? You're still going to hit another fear. It just means that with that new level comes new fears, new challenges that you haven't experienced yet. And that's why this is a constant journey, a lifelong process that you go through to identify what is going to hold you back from that next level. And maybe your fear is the next level, and you have to overcome that.
Is there kind of like normal lifetime fears which people could identify in themselves? I mean, for example, not wanting to do new things is one key measure that you can see in yourself. You go, I don't want to do new things because maybe that's a little bit scary, or maybe I'm just not confident doing that. And are people going to laugh at me? Is there these identifiers which people can kind of see in themselves when they're even doing a doTERRA business? That they can kind of like self-analyze to help themselves through their business, do you think? Can anyone give me?
I think there is. I'll give a non-business example. So, you know, I think a lot of people struggle with getting regular exercise. Okay. And me included, right? I always have a goal. I said, man, I really want to do this, but do I wake up early enough to do it? No. And I think the idea here is, and I go until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm finally like, okay, I guess I'm just not going to get it in today. But the point is, what is stopping me from just pausing my day to just put 20 minutes in or something, right? I don't have to do anything fancy at the gym. I mean, just calisthenics at home would be fine. So let's talk about what is the fear? What is stopping me from that? And I mean, it could be as simple as I have this fear that if I get really into exercise, I won't have time for something. I won't have time for family. I won't have time for this business, success, whatever. Or maybe my fear is I never, ever get to eat sweet things again in my life. Like if I have to maintain a 6-pack, that means I never get chocolate again or something, right? And so, you know, what is the fear that's really driving me on that? And it's going to be different for everybody. Somebody might think that if I get exercise and I'm not talking like bodybuilder rip, but if I get exercise and I get strong and I look fit, maybe I won't fit in among my friends anymore. And maybe the fear is belonging. Maybe the fear is that I'll have to change who I am. And then that's when I would go through that fear setting exercise. So my fear is I won't fit in if I get fit. Well, what's the worst case scenario? I have to choose different friends. I have to up level my friends, right? I have to get new friends that maybe I haven't done in 20 years since high school.